J.D. Vance is pathetic. It is why at a press conference that can only be described as disgusting and disgraceful, he went up before the media, just sullied the name of Renee Good, dishonored her memory, and then ran away like the pathetic little, not even a man, just child that he is. That is J.D. Vance running from the press, unable to stand his ground, waving his finger down and lecturing you, but unable to face any pushback. But today, we're going to give him some pushback. We're going to call out his. We're going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, the fact that we are going to call out J.D. Vance to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into what Vance had to say at this press conference, I want to start with what Carolyn Levitt said, because it sets us up for a very scary place, as Donald Trump is doing anything possible to militarize our entire country. Carolyn Levitt said this.
Vice President, the Trump administration will redouble our efforts to get the worst of the worst, criminal, illegal alien, killers, rapists, and pedophiles off of American streets. The Department of Homeland Security will continue to operate on the ground in Minnesota, not only to remove criminal illegal aliens, but also to continue conducting door-to-door investigations of the rampant fraud that has taken place in the state under the failed and corrupt leadership of Democrat Governor Tim Walz. Taxpayers have been ripped off to the tune of billions of dollars in this one state alone. And that is going to end, and people are going to be held accountable.
It wasn't just enough for them to be roaming the streets. ICE is now going to be banging down your door. People who have no respect for the law, who are untrained, who are unqualified. And by the way, that's the point. Why do you think that they lowered the standards for qualification for ICE? Why do you think they made an easier medical and physical exam? Because they don't want people who are good at this job. They want thugs. They want Proud Boys. They want Oath Keepers. They want people who view themselves not as servants of a code of law enforcement. They are not community safety. They are trying to disrupt and hurt people. They think that they are not accountable to anyone. They do not believe that there is accountability coming to them. But that needs to change. That needs to change. We need to have Democrats who are making it clear that ICE is not something that can be salvaged. We are not going to trim their budget. We are going to dissolve it completely, and we're not going to put up with, like this, from J.D. Vance, just dishonoring the memory in the name of a woman who had her life stolen.
Happened in Minneapolis, and this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally, because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace.
Where does J.D. Vance get off? He is a truly depraved individual, and there is nothing that he stands by. There's no code of ethics. There is no guiding principle of J.D. Vance. He is not grounded in any moral clarity. He is just doing whatever he has to do and saying whatever he has to say to win the Republican nomination in 2028. That is what he cares about. He doesn't care who he has to throw under the bus. Lately, it's been Donald Trump trying to keep some distance on Venezuela because Vance, again, just cares about Vance. This is disgusting. And it doesn't surprise me that a guy who's thrown his own wife under the bus doesn't care that a mother, a member of a community, and a lot of people said yesterday, this was an American citizen. This was an American citizen, but it's a person who had their life stolen. It doesn't matter citizenship or not, a person who had her life stolen. And now J.D. Vance is trying to invoke the same ridiculous false narrative about the left. That rings really hollow considering what day it was only 2 days ago. But listen to what Vance had to say right before he had to run away from the press. And that means that Democrats have to stop rallying the mob against legitimate law enforcement operations.
It means that Democrats have to stop rallying the mob against legitimate law enforcement operations. And that means that we are going to get tougher. And
it was about a year ago to the day that J.D. Vance said on television, well, Donald Trump's not going to pardon everybody. The really violent people, the real bad criminals, the worst of the worst. He's not going to pardon those insurrectionists. And then what did Donald Trump do just days later? He pardoned those insurrectionists. So I don't want to hear from J.D. Vance about large mobs being rallied to attack law enforcement. When Donald Trump, what did he do yesterday? Put up plaques and posted on government websites that police officers and Nancy Pelosi were responsible for what happened on January 6th. That's what you're telling me? And JD wants to blame the left because a woman trying to drive away from ICE agents harassing her and her community is somehow some radical domestic terrorist. It is idiotic, and it's why J.D. Vance just ran away, because he can't stand his ground.
Republicans and get in arguments with the press about things, and I understand that. I think it's really irresponsible for you guys to go out there and imply or tell the American people that a guy who defended himself from being rammed by an automobile is guilty of murder. Be a little bit more careful. We're going to talk about toning down the temperature, which I know the president wants to do, and I certainly want to do. One of the ways we tone down the temperature is to have a media that tells the truth. I encourage you all to do that. God bless you.
He didn't want to take any more flack. He wanted to go up there, scream at us, lecture us, and then say, that's it, I'm done, I'm good, I'm fine. But that's J.D. Vance. This is a weak guy. He will put on whatever mask it takes and allow his face to grow into it. That is what he has done with Donald Trump. And that's what the people who back J.D. Vance want. They want a militarized America. And let's think about why. Where does Elon Musk, where does Peter Thiel, where do these oligarchs get their money? How are they able to profit immensely? Well, of course we know. It's because people like Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, who under the control of the oligarchs, who are bought out, and you know who like them, those are their buddies. They're happy to make sure that they pay nothing in corporate and personal taxes. So let's start there. But Donald Trump made a big announcement yesterday that I think is important, especially if we are looking towards the future that J.D. Vance would want in his presidency. God willing, it never comes. And why Peter Thiel and Elon Musk are willing to spend so much money to make it happen. Because Donald Trump yesterday said that he wants the military budget to be upped 50%, go from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. The guy who said that he was going to cut $1 trillion out of the federal government budget, who said maybe 2-3 is on the table at the beginning of last year, is now saying we're increasing the military budget by $500 billion. Where does that money go? Well, we know recently Don Jr. got himself a nice fat government contract from the military to build drones. Something I didn't know Don Jr. does, but he doesn't. He just grifts. But who stands to gain the most? A guy like Elon Musk, who is having huge investments in his AI technology, now come from the federal government, now come from the military. That's where these guys make huge profits. The military-industrial complex has extended its way out to this tech oligarch class, where someone like Peter Thiel can stand to see Palantir benefit hugely from further militarization of our country. That's what these guys want. They want troops on the streets because they see it as profit in their pocket. They do not just want to bang on your door, like Carolyn Levitt said. They want to monitor everything that is happening in your house. They want to surveil you. They want every data point possible on what is happening in your life. And they want it to be owned by Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Larry Ellison, and the US military. That is what Donald Trump's term is setting up right now for the oligarchs who own him. Because as we know, Donald Trump is not doing the work himself. Marco Rubio has 4 jobs. Stephen Miller runs Venezuela somehow. J.D. Vance, God knows what he's in charge of, trying to make himself president. But the tech oligarchs are the ones running things in this administration. Donald Trump just wants to make sure we're not talking about the Epstein files and grift another, 2030 billion while he's still in office. That's what Trump is after. So that's what Vance wants. This is a perfect opportunity for him to warn of the crazy radical leftists who we need to spend billions of dollars on surveillance tech and military AI to make sure you're safe from. J.D. Vance is taking Renee Good's name and dragging it through the mud. A woman who had her life stolen for shareholder value because that is what his life is about. J.D. Vance is an empty vessel for ambition and for billionaire profits. Why did Peter Thiel take him under his wing? It's not because he thought he was a super charming, charismatic, nice guy who had a great vision for America. He said, this is something that I can mold. J.D. Vance is a tool, and he's disgusting. He's disgusting. J.D. Vance has no moral ground. J.D. Vance has no center. He is a depraved individual, and that is the truth about him, and he will do and say whatever it takes. And on that militarization, J.D. Vance continued with what he had to say about Donald Trump's current freakout that Senate Republicans have turned on him, that they voted for the War Powers Resolution to stop Donald Trump's further escalation of military policies action. And Vance said this.
Than any disagreement in policy. If you look at the people who actually voted, every single one of them have supported the administration's plan. Second of all, as the president, I believe himself has already said, every president, Democrat or Republican, believes the War Powers Act is fundamentally a fake and unconstitutional law. It's not going to change anything about how we conduct foreign policy over the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months, and that'll continue to be how we approach things.
What's so funny about this is that Donald Trump just gave a huge endorsement today. He said that Susan Collins, who will win the Republican nomination, should never serve an elected office again. Now, of all of the potentially close Senate races, I think Maine might be the most important. Texas certainly, you look at Nebraska, of course, but I think Maine is a big one. And, you know, we love Graham Plattner on the show. What just a layup we're getting from Donald Trump in that race from Graham Plattner. That is almost an endorsement at this point. Susan Collins should not serve elected office. And J.D. Vance is continuing to say the same thing, digging a grave for the Senate that he is the president of as vice president of the United States. And J.D., I think maybe has a plan there. He's thinking, all right, if I don't have to do any tie-breaking votes in the Senate because Democrats have won the Senate back, maybe I can spend more time out on the campaign trail when I'm running for president. Maybe that's what J.D. Vance is thinking about right now. I don't know. It's always about him, and we're going to call him out on this show every single day. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'll see you soon.